Life has a way of leading us to unexpected places, and for me, that place was a quiet little home nestled just outside the limits of a bustling suburban neighborhood. After decades of hard work and sacrifice, I finally found the peaceful retreat I had long dreamed of, a property surrounded by nature, where the air was crisp, and the only sounds were the rustling of trees and the occasional chirping of birds. It was a slice of heaven, far from the madness of city traffic, noisy neighbors, and the endless rules of community associations. The land stretched generously, with a backyard that offered breathtaking sunsets and an old dirt path that curved toward the distant neighborhood. At first glance, it was nothing more than an unpaved trail, overgrown with weeds and untouched by pavement, something I assumed had been there long before I arrived. Little did I know, this innocent-looking path would become the battleground for a war I never asked for. For the first few months, everything was idyllic. My days were filled with small home projects, gardening, and enjoying coffee on my porch as the sun rose over the tree line. I had never felt more at peace. Occasionally, I would see a few folks from a neighboring community passing by, mostly joggers or dog walkers, nodding politely as they went about their routines. It seemed harmless at first, and I thought nothing of it. I was a good neighbor. After all, if someone needed to cut through my land to make their walk a little easier, what was the harm? I never imagined that being accommodating would soon turn into outright exploitation. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. I would wake up in the morning and notice fresh tire tracks in the dirt, wide enough and deep enough to suggest more than just a bicycle or a random passerby. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was a delivery driver taking a wrong turn or perhaps someone from the utility company checking the lines. But then, one evening, as I sat outside enjoying the cool breeze, I saw it for myself. A sleek black SUV came barreling down the dirt path, cutting right through my property as if it were a perfectly legal road. My first instinct was shock. Had they mistaken this for an actual street? But that moment of confusion quickly turned into frustration when, only a few minutes later, another car followed the same path. As days passed, it became a pattern. At first, it was just a handful of vehicles every week, but then it escalated. Morning rush hours, late afternoon commutes, even weekend traffic. It felt like my property had turned into an unofficial road without my consent. I would step outside, waving at the drivers in an attempt to get their attention, but most of them either ignored me or, worse, gave me a dismissive nod as if I was some bystander on the side of the road. Some even had the audacity to honk at me, as if I was the one in the way. It was infuriating. Here I was, the rightful owner of this land, yet I had somehow become an inconvenience to the very people trespassing on it. What truly made my blood boil was a disrespect. Not a single person stopped to ask if they could use the land. No courtesy, no common decency, just an unspoken entitlement that this path was theirs for the taking. And the worst part? The wear and tear began to show. My once pristine land was now riddled with deep tire grooves, patches of torn-up grass, and even the occasional litter left behind by careless drivers. This was no longer a misunderstanding. This was an invasion. It wasn't long before I decided I had had enough. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across my yard, I parked myself outside, determined to put an end to this nonsense. The next time a car tried to pass through, I would stop them, face to face. It didn't take long. Within minutes, a silver sedan approached, its headlights cutting through the twilight. I stepped forward, raising my hand in a clear signal to stop. The driver, a middle-aged man in a business suit, rolled down his window, looking mildly irritated, as if I had interrupted his evening routine. "Can I help you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Yeah, I'm just trying to get home," he responded casually, motioning toward the neighborhood ahead as if that was explanation enough. "This is private property," I said firmly. "You can't just drive through here." His expression shifted from mild annoyance to outright disbelief. "Oh, come on," he scoffed. "Everybody uses this road. It's always been like this." The entitlement in his voice made my jaw tighten. That may have been before I moved in. I counted. But this is my land now, and I don't recall giving anyone permission to treat it like a public road. He shook his head, muttering something under his breath, then put his car in reverse and backed out. But he was just beginning. Over the next few days, I had similar conversations with several others, neighbors, delivery drivers, even teenagers in their parents' cars. Some argued, some tried to guilt-trip me, and some simply drove away in a huff. But one thing became clear. The more I stood my ground, the more resistance I faced. The tension between me and the HOA reached its peak when they sent a formal letter threatening legal action. They claimed my property had been a public access point for years, even though they had no actual documentation proving it. I consulted a lawyer, who assured me they had no case. But I knew I had to do more than just fight them legally. I had to expose their tactics. I reached out to a local news station that often covered property rights disputes and HOA overreach. They were more than interested in my story. A few days later, they arrived with cameras, capturing everything: the tire tracks, the damaged yard, the makeshift fencing. They even interviewed a few HOA residents, some of whom admitted they had been misled into thinking the path was public property. Once the news story aired, the response was overwhelming. Homeowners across the city began sharing their own HOA horror stories. The public outcry was enough to put serious pressure on the HOA board. Within a week, I received another letter, this time an official apology. They acknowledged that they had no claim to my property and would no longer pursue the matter. Even better, Carren, the HOA president, was forced to resign. The gate I had installed remained locked, and my property finally felt like mine again. The lesson was clear: stand your ground, know your rights, and never let entitlement override justice. My land, my rules, and no one, not even an overreaching HOA, was going to take that away from me.